The galaxy was vast beyond comprehension, filled with ancient civilizations and powerful empires that had ruled for millennia. To them, humanity was nothing more than a fleeting curiosity, a young and primitive species clinging to survival on an insignificant planet called Earth. The alien races saw humans as weak, unworthy of notice, and dismissed them as no more than a speck of dust in the grand scheme of the cosmos. But what they failed to see was that the human race was not so easily ignored. They had something that the rest of the galaxy could never understand, a spark hidden deep within their very beings. It was a power that had remained dormant for centuries, yet was waiting for the right moment to awaken. The humans had been biding their time, quietly advancing in ways that even they could not fully comprehend, while the galaxies turned a blind eye to them. The humans were secretly unlocking their potential in every corner of their world. Technology had progressed, but not in the ways the aliens had anticipated. The humans had developed more than machines and weapons. They had begun to unlock the latent abilities within their minds, powers that could reshape the very fabric of reality itself. But no one knew this, not the alien empires, not even the humans themselves fully understood what they had unleashed yet. It was all set into motion on a quiet afternoon in a small laboratory deep beneath the surface of Earth. It was there that a young scientist named Dr. Elisa Hayes discovered something that would forever change the course of human history. Dr. Hayes had always been driven by an insatiable curiosity. She was fascinated by energy fields and the mysteries of the universe. She spent years studying quantum physics and energy manipulation, trying to understand how the universe worked and how energy flowed throughout space and time. One day, while conducting an experiment in a forgotten corner of the laboratory, she accidentally activated a device that had been buried in obscurity for centuries. It was nothing more than a small, unassuming object, a metal sphere covered in strange symbols. But when Dr. Hayes activated it, her world changed in an instant. She felt a surge of energy, unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't just the device that responded to her touch, it was her own mind. As if her thoughts were now connected to something far greater than herself, she reached out instinctively, and the energy within the sphere flowed through her fingers. Her mind opened to the vast expanse of the universe. And in that moment she understood that she was no longer just a human, she was something more. She could bend the laws of physics with a single thought. She could manipulate energy fields, shape reality. As if it were clay, she could see the world around her in ways that defied logic and reason. It wasn't just power, it was a connection to something ancient, something vast and forgotten. Humanity had always possessed this potential, but it had been locked away, waiting for the right person to unlock it. Dr. Hayes was the first to awaken the spark, but she would not be the last. As she stood there in awe of what she had just experienced, she knew one thing for certain: humanity was no longer weak. They had just begun to tap into their true power, and the galaxy would soon learn what it meant to underestimate humankind. Dr. Hayes stood in the silent lab, still processing what had just happened. The energy within her was overwhelming, yet it felt as if she was only touching the surface of something far greater. Her mind buzzed with thoughts that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of space itself. She looked at the small metal sphere in her hand, now glowing faintly with an eerie light. It had been a relic, forgotten in time, but now it had unlocked a power beyond imagination. As she focused on the sphere, she could feel the threads of energy that connected it to the world around her. It wasn't just her mind reacting to the object. It was the object responding to her, as if it had been waiting for the right person to activate it. The realization hit her hard. This wasn't some isolated accident. This was the beginning of something far larger than herself. She didn't waste any time. She quickly left the lab and raced to find her colleague, Dr. Lucas Green, who had worked alongside her for years in researching unknown forms of energy. He had always been the skeptic, the one who dismissed the possibility of anything extraordinary happening. But now, she knew he had to see this. He had to understand what she had unlocked. When she found him, she barely had to explain. His eyes widened in disbelief as she demonstrated what she had done. With a single thought, she levitated a heavy metal chair and sent it floating across the room. Lucas stood frozen, his mouth agape as he watched the chair hover, suspended in midair. It was impossible, yet it was happening right in front of him. "You?" Lucas stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "How are you doing this?" "I don't know," Dr. Hayes replied, her voice filled with awe. "But I can feel it, Lucas. This power, it's not just about controlling objects. I can feel the energy that connects everything. The universe itself is like a vast web, and we can tap into it." They spent the next few hours experimenting, pushing the boundaries of what Hayes could do. She soon discovered she wasn't limited to just manipulating objects. She could manipulate the flow of time itself, if only for brief moments, a few seconds here or there, but enough to glimpse a future event or change the course of a small moment in time. It wasn't long before Lucas joined her, stretching his own mind to test his limits. They found that, though he lacked the same raw instinct as Hayes, he too could manipulate the environment around him, though his abilities were more controlled and subtle. But the real shock came when they tested the energy they were both channeling. It was no longer just an isolated event, confined to their small lab. When they connected their powers, the results were catastrophic. A single beam of energy blasted from their combined efforts, shooting through the walls of the facility and leaving a massive crater outside. The energy they were controlling was far beyond what they had first imagined. "This is just the beginning," Dr. Hayes whispered, her mind racing. "We've awakened something in us, Lucas, something that could change everything." And so it did. Word spread quickly among the scientific community as Dr. Hayes and Lucas became the first to truly unlock the potential of human minds. They shared their findings with trusted colleagues, and before long, more and more humans began to realize the power that lay dormant within them. What had started as an isolated incident became a global phenomenon. Humanity was no longer bound by their primitive technology. They had unlocked something far more powerful: the potential to control energy, manipulate time, and bend the laws of the universe itself. The spark had ignited, and with it, the birth of a new era for humanity. News of the human breakthrough spread like wildfire, not just across Earth, but through the galaxy itself. The galaxy, however, took little notice at first. The alien empires, vast and ancient, had long since ceased to fear any race from Earth. To them, humans were nothing more than an insignificant species clinging to the edge of civilization. They had seen countless races rise and fall, and the idea that humans could pose any real threat seemed laughable. At first, the Galactic Council dismissed the reports coming from Earth as little more than rumors. The humans were simply lucky, or perhaps just another minor race that had stumbled upon some unusual discovery. The Council's members, representatives of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy, believed their power was so absolute that they did not need to waste time on the insignificant humans. But then came the first demonstration. It began with a simple human ship, the Endeavor, a vessel designed for deep space exploration and research. It was nothing special by galactic standards, barely a blip on the radar of the Empire's vast fleets. On board were Dr. Hayes and a handful of scientists who had been working with her on uncovering the potential of humanity's newfound powers. They had decided to test the limits of their abilities and to see if their connection to the energy fields could be used beyond Earth. The Endeavor entered deep space, near a sector that had once been controlled by a powerful alien warlord. The humans, thinking they were simply testing their new abilities on an uninhabited part of the galaxy, did not expect a response. But what they didn't realize was that they were being watched. As the Endeavor made its way through the sector, a fleet of alien pirate ships appeared, unmarked and aggressive. The pirates, hungry for wealth and power, mistook the human ship for an easy target. They surrounded the Endeavor and demanded the crew surrender or face destruction. What the pirates didn't anticipate was the humans' response. Dr. Hayes, standing on the observation deck, felt a strange pull in the air. The crew of the Endeavor was on high alert, but the pirates were too close to avoid conflict. Without hesitation, Dr. Hayes reached out with her mind, her newfound abilities flowing through her. The energy she had unlocked before surged, But this time it was different. She wasn't just manipulating objects. She was controlling the very energy of the space around her. A wave of force erupted from the ship, radiating outward. It was unlike anything the pirates had ever seen. Ships were torn apart, their hulls shredded as if they were made of paper. The energy field expanded, leaving only scattered debris in its wake. The pirate fleet had been obliterated in seconds, without a single shot being fired. The pirate ships had been reduced to rubble, their crews scattered across the void. The message was clear. The humans were no longer helpless. They were no longer the weak, vulnerable species that could be easily dismissed. Dr. Hayes, standing on the deck of the Endeavor, knew that this was just the beginning. The universe had now seen what humanity was capable of, and there was no turning back. The reaction from the galaxy was swift. The Galactic Council, once confident in their dominance, convened in an emergency session. The reports of the human attack on the pirates were quickly verified, and the Council realized they had underestimated the humans. But it wasn't just the Council that took notice. The entire galaxy was beginning to wake up to the potential threat humanity posed. But the question remained, what would humanity do with this power? The galaxy had always known its place, each race aware of the hierarchy that governed the stars. Now, with humanity's powers revealed, the balance of the universe was in jeopardy, and the first stirrings of fear began to spread among the alien empires. The events following the destruction of the pirate fleet sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. At first, the alien empires were skeptical, chalking up the incident to a fluke, perhaps the result of a lucky strike or an anomaly in human technology. But as more reports flooded in from across Earth and its colonies, it became clear that the power humanity had unlocked was not some isolated phenomenon. It was a new and growing force. In every corner of Earth, humans were awakening to their own hidden abilities. It was as if the spark Dr. Hayes had ignited had spread to every individual on the planet, pushing them to access the untapped potential that lay dormant within. The world that had once been fractured by division and conflict was now united by a common bond, a shared awakening to the extraordinary power residing within each human. At first, it was subtle. Small, seemingly insignificant events began to unfold all over Earth. A child in Tokyo could move objects with a thought. A teacher in London could stop time for a few moments to rearrange a classroom without the students ever noticing. A mechanic in Johannesburg could mend machines with a mere gesture, as if the tools themselves obeyed his will. What was happening was undeniable. Humanity was changing. As the days passed, the abilities of humans grew more profound. It wasn't just telekinesis or simple manipulations of time. It was much more than that. The boundaries of what was possible began to dissolve. Ordinary humans began to experiment with their powers, each unlocking unique abilities. Some could manipulate energy, creating devastating waves of force with the power of their minds. Others discovered how to alter the flow of time in more complex ways, slowing it down to a crawl or speeding it up in an instant. There were even reports of humans who could bend gravity, creating pockets of levitation, or walking on walls as if the laws of physics no longer applied. Humanity's understanding of their powers was growing by the day, but so too was their sense of unity. People from all walks of life, all over the globe, began to work together to harness these abilities for the good of their planet. No longer were they divided by borders, by countries, or by ideologies. The power that had awakened within them united them in ways nothing else ever had. There was a sense of purpose that swept over humanity, a belief that they were meant for something greater, something far beyond the confines of their small world. While Earth was undergoing this rapid transformation, Dr. Hayes and her team worked tirelessly to understand the source of this power. They theorized that the energy was not just within the humans, it was linked to the very fabric of the universe itself. The object that Dr. Hayes had found had been a key, unlocking the connection between humanity and the universe's core energy. What they had discovered was the ability to tap into the fundamental forces of nature, bending them at will. The human race, once seen as weak and fragile, had become a force to be reckoned with. Earth's once primitive technology was now dwarfed by the raw power of human minds. Cities were reshaped overnight, as people used their abilities to create towering structures or restore the environment. It was a time of unprecedented growth and development. But the galaxy was still watching, and as humanity's power grew, so did the fear of those who had once believed themselves untouchable. The alien empires, now aware of the awakening on Earth, began to reconsider their stance. For the first time in millennia, the balance of power was shifting, and the galaxy would soon learn that the humans were no longer the weak species they had once thought them to be. The fear that had begun to ripple through the galaxy was now reaching a crescendo. The alien empires, once so secure in their dominion, could no longer ignore the growing power of humanity. The reports were undeniable. Humans had become something more than the feeble species they had once dismissed. In every corner of the galaxy, whispers of the humans' abilities spread like wildfire. The age of complacency was over. The alien empires knew that their dominance was now at risk. The first response came not from a single empire, but from a coalition of races that had once held the most power in the galaxy. They called themselves the Arctan Alliance, an ancient federation of technologically advanced civilizations. The Arctan Alliance had always believed in maintaining the natural order of the galaxy, ensuring that no one race ever grew too powerful to challenge the established order. And now, they saw humanity's rapid rise as an existential threat. The Arctan Alliance sent emissaries to Earth, demanding that humanity cease all attempts to harness the powers they had discovered. They issued an ultimatum: surrender control of their newfound abilities and submit to the authority of the Galactic Council, or face destruction. The message was clear: the galaxy would not tolerate any threat to its established balance. Humanity, now united and emboldened by their new abilities, refused to back down. They had tasted power, and they were not going to let it slip away. Led by Captain Jarek Callahan, a military strategist who had quickly risen to prominence among the humans, Earth rejected the Arctan Alliance's demands. Callahan had witnessed firsthand the incredible potential of humanity's newfound strength, and he knew that Earth was no longer the weakling it once was. They would fight. What followed was not a war of armies, but a war of minds. The humans, using their powers, launched a series of surprise strikes against the Arctan Alliance's fleets. Their ships, once thought invincible, were now vulnerable to the unimaginable energy blasts humans could unleash. Entire battalions of alien soldiers were wiped out with a single wave of a hand. The humans' power was not just physical, it was mental, a force that bent the laws of nature itself. The Arctan Alliance, overwhelmed by the unexpected onslaught, retaliated with everything they had. Massive fleets of warships descended upon Earth, determined to crush the humans before their power could grow further. The humans, however, were not unprepared. Their new abilities allowed them to manipulate the battlefield in ways the Arctan Alliance could never have anticipated. Gravity was twisted, ships were destroyed before they could even launch a single attack, and time itself was bent to their advantage. The humans fought with precision, their unity and control of their powers making them unstoppable. The war was swift and brutal. It wasn't a conventional conflict. It was a battle of wits, of sheer willpower, and of the forces that governed the universe itself. The Arctan Alliance quickly realized that the humans were unlike anything they had ever faced. They weren't just fighting a race of beings. They were fighting an entire species that had tapped into the fundamental forces of reality itself. In the span of only a few weeks, the Arctan Alliance's fleets were in disarray. The humans had struck so decisively that entire alien civilizations were forced to retreat. The galaxy had underestimated the strength of humanity, and now they were paying the price. As Earth's forces secured their victory, the message was clear: humanity would no longer be ruled by anyone. They had unlocked their true power, and they intended to keep it. The galaxy, for the first time in millennia, was faced with the undeniable reality that the balance of power had shifted, and humanity was at the center of it all. The victory over the Arctan Alliance was swift, but the consequences were far-reaching. The galaxy had long been divided into powerful factions, each ruling their own territory with an iron grip. The fall of the Arctan Alliance sent shockwaves through the entire galaxy, and soon, every empire began to reevaluate their position in the grand cosmic order. No one was safe from the rising threat of humanity, and every ruler knew that the balance had been forever changed. Back on Earth, the human leaders had gathered to discuss their next steps. Dr. Hayes, Captain Callahan, and others who had led the charge against the Arctan Alliance were now at the forefront of a new movement, one that would reshape the galaxy. The humans had proven their strength, but they also understood that their power was not just a weapon to be wielded. It was a responsibility that came with profound consequences. They couldn't let their newfound abilities spiral out of control, nor could they allow the galaxy to descend into chaos. As Earth's leaders convened in a newly formed council, they realized that their next challenge wasn't just about fighting alien forces. It was about creating a new order in a galaxy that had never known peace. Humanity had always struggled with division, with war, with greed. But now, they had the power to bring change. The challenge was in how to wield it wisely. Captain Callahan, once a soldier in a broken world, now found himself leading a vast movement. The war with the Arctan Alliance had shown him the potential for destruction that lay within humanity. He knew that without the right guidance, their powers could easily lead them down a dark path. Earth's leaders agreed that the power to manipulate energy, time, and the fundamental forces of the universe could be used to create a better world, but it could also be a tool of unimaginable destruction if misused. While Earth's leaders debated, other civilizations in the galaxy watched with growing trepidation. The fall of the Arctan Alliance had left many uneasy. The humans were now a force to be reckoned with, but would they be benevolent rulers, or would they become the very tyrants they had once fought against? Some alien factions began to question their alliances, wondering if they should strike first before humanity's power grew even stronger. It wasn't long before the first ambassadors arrived on Earth, alien diplomats from the remaining galactic empires who sought to negotiate with the humans. They were wary, cautious, and unsure of how to approach the rapidly rising species. Some offered their support, hoping to form alliances that would ensure their survival in the new galactic order. Others came with a far more sinister agenda, attempting to manipulate the humans into serving their interests. Dr. Hayes, now one of the foremost experts on the powers that humanity had unlocked, saw these negotiations as a critical moment. She knew that the humans could not afford to become pawns in someone else's game, but they also couldn't afford to alienate every empire in the galaxy. They had to find a way to navigate these delicate political waters while maintaining their newfound strength. The Human Council, led by Dr. Hayes and Captain Callahan, decided that Earth would not become an empire. Instead, they would advocate for a new type of governance, a council of races, humans and aliens alike, working together to ensure peace and stability across the galaxy. The humans would share their knowledge and power, but only under the condition that they were not forced into subjugation by any one faction. This new order, if successful, would be a beacon of cooperation in a galaxy long ruled by greed and violence. The galaxy, now faced with an undeniable shift in power, would have to decide whether to accept this new order or risk further conflict. And while many feared what humanity might do, others began to see the potential for a brighter future. A future where the once weak species had risen to bring change to the stars. The council formed by humanity's leaders was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't just a political body, it was a symbol of a new era. Earth, once an isolated and insignificant planet on the fringe of the galaxy, now stood at the heart of the greatest experiment in galactic cooperation. The new order, where humans and alien species worked side by side, was meant to ensure that the mistakes of the past were not repeated. It was a fragile peace, one that relied on trust, understanding, and a willingness to share power. However, not every species in the galaxy was ready to embrace this new vision. The fall of the Arctan Alliance had left a power vacuum, and many of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful empires were wary of the human influence. Some saw the rise of humanity as a threat to their centuries-old dominance. The Tsukiri, a warlike insectoid species known for their ruthlessness, had always maintained a strict hierarchy, and they were quick to dismiss the idea of sharing power with humans. They had ruled their territory with an iron fist for millennia, and had no intention of yielding to anyone, least of all a race that had once been weak and defenseless. In the dark corners of the galaxy, covert alliances were being formed. The Tsukiri reached out to other disgruntled factions, species that felt their positions in the galactic order were now at risk. They began to plan for a war that would push humanity back into its place, to remind the galaxy of its long-established power dynamics. They saw the human movement for peace as a facade, a clever ruse to mask the growing strength of a species that had the potential to dominate the galaxy. If left unchecked, they believed humanity would destroy everything they had worked to build. Dr. Hayes and Captain Callahan were aware of the unrest brewing in the galaxy. Their diplomatic efforts had not gone unnoticed, and many species had openly expressed their concern. The Council, despite its best intentions, was beginning to show signs of fracture. Trust was a rare commodity, and even with humanity at the helm, the galaxy's empires were not so easily convinced to change. Yet, despite the mounting tension, humanity pressed on, trying to maintain their vision of unity. They sought to prove that a peaceful galaxy could be built, that cooperation was the key to long-lasting prosperity. But peace was never guaranteed. The Tsukiri, emboldened by their covert alliances, launched a surprise attack on one of Earth's outer colonies. The colony, once a symbol of humanity's efforts to expand beyond their home planet, was devastated in a matter of hours. The Tsukiri's brutal assault left the humans reeling, and the message was clear. No one would be allowed to disrupt the balance of power without facing consequences. Captain Callahan, with his military background, immediately called for a counterattack. He understood that the time for diplomacy had passed. The Tsukiri had made their intentions clear, and it was now a matter of survival. The Human Council debated long into the night, knowing that a war could undo everything they had worked for. But in the face of such aggression, they had no choice but to fight. The human fleet, newly equipped with the advanced technologies and abilities they had developed, prepared for battle. The war would not be fought with guns and bombs alone. It would be a war of minds, of control over the fundamental forces of the universe. Humanity had already proven their power once, but now they would need to show that they could defend their vision of peace, even if it meant fighting for it. As the first shots were fired in the new war, the galaxy held its breath. The future of the human race, and the future of the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. The war had begun, and the galaxy watched as humanity fought back against the Tsukiri and their allies. The humans, who had once been the underdogs, were now on the front lines of a battle for their very survival, and for the future of the galaxy. Captain Callahan and his forces led the charge, utilizing the full extent of their powers to fight back. Ships that had once been vulnerable to attack were now untouchable, their crews able to manipulate energy fields to protect themselves. Time itself could be bent, giving them an edge in battle that no one had ever anticipated. But the Tsukiri were not easily defeated. Their insectoid nature made them ruthless and efficient, and they had prepared for this war for far longer than humanity had. The first few battles were brutal, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The humans, despite their newfound strength, struggled with the scale of the conflict. They had not expected a war on this scale, and many began to question whether they had made the right choice in taking up arms. Dr. Hayes, though heartbroken by the bloodshed, refused to let humanity lose hope. She knew that the war wasn't just about defeating the Tsukiri. It was about proving that the galaxy could be changed. She gathered the brightest minds on Earth, working tirelessly to understand how their powers could be used not just to fight, but to end the war for good. It was then that they discovered something profound. Humanity's ability to manipulate the fabric of space-time was more powerful than they had ever realized. The energy field they had unlocked was tied to the very structure of the universe itself. With this knowledge, Dr. Hayes and her team began working on a plan to use their powers to stop the war at its source. They would not just win battles, they would change the nature of the conflict itself. It was a risky plan, one that could either end the war or destroy everything. But the humans knew that they had no other choice. As the war raged on, the humans launched a final desperate assault on the Takiri stronghold, deep within their territory. This time, the human fleet wasn't just fighting with advanced technology or sheer strength. They were fighting with the power of the universe itself. The energy released in the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, with explosions that reverberated through space-time, rippling out across the stars. When the dust settled, the Takiri forces were shattered. Their stronghold lay in ruins, and the alliance that had formed against humanity was broken. The war was over, but the cost had been immense. Countless lives had been lost, and the galaxy was left in ruins. Yet, humanity had achieved what many thought impossible. They had not only survived, but they had forged a new path forward. In the aftermath of the war, Earth's leaders called for a council of all races, human and alien alike, to rebuild the galaxy. The goal was not conquest, but cooperation, a new order where no race would dominate the others. Humanity had proved that they could change the course of history, but they had also learned the painful truth. True power came with the responsibility to protect, not to dominate. The galaxy, once divided and ruled by fear, now had the chance to create something new. The humans, with their strength and wisdom, led the charge in building a future where peace, not war, would define the stars. Though the scars of war remained, they were a testament to the fact that humanity had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The dawn of this new era was just beginning, and the galaxy was forever changed. The humans had proven that they were no longer the weak, helpless species they had once been. Now, they were the guardians of a new world, a new hope for the future. And as they looked to the stars, they knew that this was just the beginning.